lot of people may have not heard of this news, but there is a top TNA star who has commented on potentially leaving TNA. And we're talking about Josh Alexander. He spoke with Mex from WrestleManiac UK. Mex has become one of my favorite content creators in the space. I've collaborated with him. An awesome interview. And basically, you guys should check out the full interview. But Josh Alexander talks about potentially testing free agency. And the reason why he says this is because he's never really had the opportunity to do that, because he's re-signed with TNA. And look, here's what you guys need to know. Josh Alexander is a top TNA star. If he leaves TNA, it's a big blow to TNA. It is. There were rumors at one point that Josh Alexander was going to be brought into AEW. Nothing ever came to that fruition. There's a lot of rumors that WWE is very high on Josh Alexander and would like to bring him in. I'm curious how things are going to go down, because if Josh Alexander signs with WWE and works with NXT, there is always that opportunity for him to come into the company, right? And then work with TNA due to their partnership. I think it is very clear if he were to sign with AEW, he would not have that opportunity, and that opportunity would not be available to him, because it is very clear that TNA will not work with AEW while WWE is working with TNA. So Josh Alexander leaving TNA would be a pretty big blow, but it could make a lot of sense for him to come into NXT. It could make a lot of sense for him to test New Japan Pro Wrestling. The thing is, I don't see him going to New Japan Pro Wrestling, largely due to the fact that TNA and New Japan Pro Wrestling work together. And so when I see Josh Alexander talking about potentially testing free agency, I think this guy will get paid. I think this guy will come in and do great things wherever he goes. If I could be real honest with you guys, I do not want to see him join AEW, because I don't have faith in AEW to bring him in and treat him as a big deal. But I do feel as if he joined WWE and he started off in NXT, there would be something really cool that they can do there. I feel like they would treat him as a big deal until he is ready to go to the main roster. And keep in mind, as I said earlier in the stream, it is time that we start looking at NXT as a third brand. They are moving to the CW network. They're bringing in names. We've already looked at some of the signings. If they're bringing in Motor City Machine Guns, and you're bringing in Stephanie Vaquer and Julia and Delta Brady, maybe Ray Phoenix and Pentagon go there. I think it is very clear that NXT should be treated as a third brand. And the number one thing that NXT is currently missing, the one area where it just seems like they need a little bit of improvement, is literally the main event scene. And I'm very happy with how Pete Dunne and Trick Williams and Ethan Page are doing in that spot. But it is very evident that WWE NXT could utilize some more main event talent. And so if I'm the WWE, I bring in Josh Alexander with the hopes of him running things on the CW. And then when the time is right, call him up to the main roster. And this is a guy who could cut a promo. This is a guy who is really good in the ring. This is a guy who is really skilled. This is a guy who would adapt incredibly well to the WWE audience. The WWE audience will like this guy. If you want him as a baby face, he could be a big baby face. If you want him as a heel, he could be a big heel. This is a guy that would do great things in WWE. So for him to potentially leave TNA and test free agency, it's interesting. The reality is this, though, and I'm going to say this because as much as I'm praising WWE and how I have confidence in WWE bringing him in, the safest choice for TNA is obviously keeping him, but the safest choice for Josh Alexander is staying in TNA. There might come a point in time where Nick Nemeth decides to leave TNA, or some of these other top guys decide to leave TNA. Josh Alexander will always be regarded as a top star in TNA. And it's just entirely up to whether or not he wants to wave the company flag. It's also entirely up to Anthem, the company that owns TNA, to look at Josh Alexander and say, listen, we believe in your value. We want you at the top spot. But it is pretty fearful that TNA is going to have to compete with AEW and WWE. I am super intrigued to see how they do that. Because the bank accounts, there's a difference, man. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. WWE and AEW got money. TNA has money as well. Don't get it twisted. They have money. But it's on a lot lesser scale than AEW and WWE. So this is what I propose. I propose WWE brings in Josh Alexander on a loan. This is a weird idea, but I feel like WWE and TNA, based on their partnership, could do this. WWE will pay Josh Alexander to come into the company and work NXT. He should actually be the first TNA champion, TNA wrestler to become an NXT champion. That's actually my belief. At the same time, WWE would not be signing him exclusively. It would be like a loan contract where he could actually work for TNA and NXT moving forward. But WWE will loan him out. I think that would be a really unique idea, because if he wanted to test free agency, I do think AEW and WWE financially will blow TNA out of the water. But if WWE can come in and say, listen, we don't want TNA to be hurt by this, there's definitely an arrangement that could be made. And I think Josh Alexander would be the perfect person for that to happen to. Josh Alexander and Jordan Grace are the two people where if they leave TNA, I do believe it is a very big blow to TNA. And those are two names that I can definitely see leaving the company, not because they don't like TNA, but because the offers outside of TNA are going to be super significant. And for shits and giggles, how about we fantasy book the idea of Ethan Page versus Josh Alexander? Former tag team champions in TNA. Ethan Page in NXT as the world champion right now. Would be kind of cool to see Josh Alexander go in there, and you know for a fact that that Florida audience would know exactly the history behind that, and then it would be up to WWE to tell the story. But I think that would be really dope. I would like to see WWE get to the point where they do something like that, because quite frankly, I don't want to see TNA get hurt, but I could see it hurting TNA. But at the same time too, there are some great feuds and storylines WWE can tell. There's got to be a way to make it happen for sure.